Welcome to Global Vision. I'm very excited to have here with us Dr. Brittany Barreto. You see, we have different ways to pronounce this name in Spanish, but I think I did it correctly. Just correct me if I'm not. And she is the leader of FemTech Focus. And we're going to speak today about FemTech and everything that has to do with health. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
The first question is, who is Dr. Brittany Barreto? Tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Brittany Barreto, and I am a geneticist. So I have a PhD in molecular and human genetics. I love science. And then after doing my PhD, I got into entrepreneurship. And I love building things that have implications on people's lives immediately. I felt like in science, my research may not be used for 10 to 20 years, but in entrepreneurship, your thing could be used next week. And so I really love that impact factor. I started my first biotech company, and I'm sure we'll get into that, called Pheramor. After working in a few startups, I then became a venture capitalist investing in startups, and I was working the Houston, Texas market. That is when I found FemTech. FemTech is innovation in women's health and wellness, and I just fell in love with it. And I am now leading a podcast and a nonprofit organization empowering equality for women's health and wellness. Last thing about me, or another fun fact, is I have two dogs that I love very much. And their names are Trypsin and Cork, like the physics terms, and the enzyme, because that is how nerdy I am. And I love my dogs.
Oh my God, I love that you're naughty, and I love that you love dogs and that you mentioned them here.
Yeah.
I feel that is so cool. So tell me a little bit about your first entrepreneurship venture, that it was Pheramor. What was about?
So Pheramor was based on old science, actually. Back in the 60s and 70s, scientists proved that you could actually predict who is physically attracted to who based on a few genes because of your pheromones. And so humans are actually attracted to one another when our immune system genes are very different. And the way we know if our immune system genes are very different are through pheromones. Pheromones are things we excrete through our sweat, and you can't tell that you're smelling it. It's kind of an unscented smell, but scientists showed this and it was published, and I was in college and I was reading these papers and I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so cool if there was a DNA-based dating app? And so that was my first company, Pheramor. Now you understand the pheromones, amor, love, DNA-based dating. And we had a dating app that you bought a DNA kit. It was a cheek swab. Thousands of singles all across the United States purchased it. They swabbed their cheek, and then we matched them with local singles based on biological compatibility. It was a huge learning experience. It was so much fun. I became the, doctor of love. I was traveled the world talking about genetic-based attraction. To this day, it is still very much a fun topic to talk about. Unfortunately, the company did not work out. I did raise $1.3 million for it from investors, but after 2 years, Apple actually changed their policies about who can ask for DNA in the App Store. And dating apps were no longer allowed to ask for your genome. And so in March of 2019, Apple took us off the App Store and said, you can only come back if you take the DNA test off. But that was our main proposition. And so in the end, we ended up closing the company.
What are the lessons that you learned from that experience?
Ooh, I learned a lot. All right. So where do I start? One of the lessons was having faith in myself that I am a founder and CEO. When I started it, I was still a PhD graduate student in science. And so I was very insecure. I thought I don't have an MBA. I'm a young woman. I'm 24. What do I know? I've never run a company. And so what I did was I brought a lot of other people in and gave them a lot of power. That at the end of the day, I realized I was the boss. I knew what I was doing. And I made that mistake of giving a lot of power away early on out of insecurities. So today I know I'm the boss. I know I'm the founder, right? I know I'm the leader. And I'm also quick to know when quick to say I don't know stuff, right? The humility is very important, but that was a big lesson for me. Another big lesson was that even if my company closed, doesn't mean that I personally failed. I felt like I had the world on my shoulders, that if I had to close my company, it meant that I failed every female founder in the world, and that my standards should be so much higher. And at the end of the day, you know what? Yes, the company closed. I don't call it a failure anymore, because I learned so much, and it was actually just the platform for me to jump to my next step, which was to get into venture capital.
Good. And then what leads you into FemTech?
Hmm. So I discovered the word FemTech in about 2019, and
Mhm.
FemTech is a word that was coined in 2016. And there's actually some debate about whether that word is the best word or not, but I like it because we have a word to find one another. Now, what do I mean by that? If you Google women's health and wellness, you may find your local gym. You may find, vitamins. You may
Mhm.
find like exercise coaches, yoga studios, which is all great. But how do you search technology, innovation, and women's health and wellness? Well, you use the word femtech. So I'm grateful we have a word, because when you have a word, you can find each other more easy. And so in 2019, I said, oh, I love femtech. I love it. I love it for three main reasons. The first is that it has a lot of science, where we're talking about hormones, women's life cycles, fertility. We're talking about a lot of science stuff. I just totally love it. The second is that it's an activist move. So I've always been a feminist fighting for women's rights, and I had no idea the massive inequalities there are in research and in healthcare and in innovation for women. We are literally dying because there is a lack of funding and a lack of innovation and awareness of actually how bad it is. So when I learned, I said, oh my gosh, we're not fighting for the future of women's health, we're fighting for the present women's health. And the last part is that the market sizes are huge. And so whoever starts investing in this is going to make a lot of money. And so all three of those together, I said, oh my gosh, I have to work in femtech. And so I went to indeed.com and I put in femtech, try to find a job. And Indeed didn't even know what femtech meant. And I tried to find a conference to attend and like meet people, and there was no femtech conference. I looked on Spotify to find a femtech podcast, and there was no femtech podcast. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, so this industry is very siloed and it's not together yet. And so I started femtech focus, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit, because it's really all about awareness,
Mm.
education, empowerment. We do plan on starting a venture fund and making investments at a later time, but for right now, it is about education awareness. So we have the #1 femtech podcast in the world, over 30,000 listeners in over 90 countries. And I just interview the most interesting people. We're coming up on 100 episodes, and I just interview innovators in women's health and wellness. We have a virtual community with over 800 femtech founders. We do events. We have a summit coming up. So I feel like femtech focus is truly bringing the industry together.
Oh, I love your enthusiasm. It's contagious, honestly. Tell me, what are the challenges that you encounter being a women venture capitalist and investing in other people, and also putting your own projects together? As a woman entrepreneur, what is the biggest challenges, but also opportunities?
So I would say one of the biggest challenges for me as a woman with a PhD, so I'm in a lot of student debt. I'm 29 and single, so I don't have a rich husband or rich parents to lean on. And my first company did not succeed, so I didn't have an exit. What that looks like is that I'm an average American who does not have a lot of expendable income. And that is a huge disadvantage, unfortunately, I feel like, when you start a company, because a lot of it needs to be bootstrapped in the beginning. And so I see a lot of successful female founders who are in a partnership with someone who has enough money to fund them and float them. Whereas I'm a dog mom and paying my rent and paying my car and my insurance, right? And so I feel that one of the biggest disadvantages is being somebody who doesn't come from money and having to be really, really conscious about the business model from day one. From day one, I had to ask, how are we going to make money? Because I didn't have enough money to just float us for a year and figure it out along the way. Now the advantage is probably the same thing, right? The advantage is that from day one, I asked, how are we going to make money? And now we're not profitable, but we're sustainable, right?
Mhm.
But I also think the advantage is FemTech is a first movers market. The reason I have 30,000 listeners isn't because I have really great Facebook ads or that Oprah said she listened to me. Like, no, I haven't spent a penny on marketing. The reason I have that many listeners, so all over the world, is because we're the only FemTech podcast. So anyone who wants to listen to FemTech podcasts, they look up FemTech, we're the only thing they find. I own like 30 FemTech domain names and they're all available for $9. I bought them all, you know? And what this means is that if you want to work in FemTech, it's a really, really great opportunity to step in and make a big splash because people are hungry for it. They're interested in it. And if you move in it, you're going to get noticed.
Wonderful. So what you will say that is the trends that we should expect in health tech in general?
A lot more digital health and telehealth. COVID has absolutely shifted our paradigm of what is going to the doctor look like. I think at this point, people have had at least one maybe telehealth appointment and they realize, dang, this was very convenient. I don't think I'd ever want to go back, and fill out paperwork and sit in an office and take time off of work. I'm actually very passionate about telehealth because it increases accessibility, especially for women who work hourly wage jobs or don't have childcare or don't have a vehicle to go to the doctors. So I'm really excited about accessibility for healthcare via telehealth. So that's a big trend we're going to see. I'm also really excited about, again, I can't help myself but say a new attention towards women's health, because something else that I think the pandemic has revealed to us is that not everyone gets the same healthcare. I think that a lot of us, whether it was women or people of color, knew that we didn't get the same healthcare, but now it's been revealed on a really massive scale and very, very apparent. We do not all get the same healthcare. And so as I explain how women's health is disadvantaged, based on generation of bias, not believing women when they say they're in pain, or misdiagnosing them because they say they're tired, and the doctors say, well, women are always tired, but turns out she's having a heart attack, like these types of things. Now when I talk about this, people are like, oh yeah, I've heard about this like bias in healthcare thing. And so I'm really excited for people to start looking at healthcare not just as medicine and innovation for the average white man, but to start to look at healthcare as, what does it look like for Black women? What does it look like for brown men? What does it look like, all of, and every color and gender in between.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. To conclude, how do you support other women? I know that you really do that. So I would like to just that you leave us with a source of inspiration, and how do you contribute to make the life of women better?
Oh, I love this. I think I do a lot of speaking engagements. It's one of the things that I think I was born with as a skill, is I love speaking. I love telling my story. I have that energy, right? I don't know what it is. I was born with something in me that like people just eat it up, right? And so I feel like I want to use that gift, and I do a lot of speaking engagements. And so in my speaking engagements, so what I try to do, and I'm going to do it right now, is be really authentic. Because when I heard people speaking throughout my years of, figuring out what the heck I was going to do with my life, I always heard speakers that sounded perfect. Everything worked out for them. They went to the best school, had the best job, and it sounded like everything was perfect. And I do not come from that. I come from a family that no one's gone to college. No one has money, expendable money. A lot of drug addiction, mental illness. And then even for myself, I struggle with PTSD. I'm very open about mental wellness. I always say, like, I'm a single 29-year-old woman with my dogs, right? Like, I'm not your typical woman who like has kids and a husband and a house and all these things, but I share that so openly so that the listeners, especially women who may say, oh my gosh, that's me, feel like I could be her. right? Because when I didn't hear my story at the podium, I thought, well, I don't know if I'm allowed up there then, right? I think that I have to be perfect and flawless to be up there, and I'll probably have to hide a lot of pieces of me in order to get invited. But I want to let people know, regardless of the cards you were dealt or the story you're currently living, you are invited to the podium.
That's wonderful. I think that is a luxury. It's a luxury to really share your authentic self. And I definitely thank you so much that you did that with us today. And you just open up and you explain your journey like an entrepreneur, how you also overcome all of the obstacles that you have in your way that I'm sure was not easy. But you will have this positivism, this optimism. And honestly, we wish you the best. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.